It's amazing how something as small and ordinary as a quarter, something most of us barely glance at, can actually be worth hundreds, even thousands of dollars. And what's even more fascinating is that these aren't ancient coins from the 1800s or limited edition releases from some obscure mint. No, we're talking about coins minted within living memory, coins that some people still have stashed away in jars, drawers, and old coin albums. Today, we're diving into two U.S. quarters that have become unexpected treasures for collectors, the 1970 and the 1979. If you're in your 40s or 50s, there's a real chance you've come across these coins at some point. And if you're a seasoned collector, or even someone who inherited a few boxes of old change from a relative, you'll want to listen closely, because these quarters are far from ordinary. Let's begin with the 1970 quarter, specifically the 1970 S. Washington quarter. At first glance, this coin doesn't stand out in any remarkable way. It bears the same iconic profile of George Washington on the obverse, the familiar eagle on the reverse, and the usual inscriptions. But what sets this particular quarter apart isn't in the design. It's in its origin, its production details, and a very specific, very unusual error that turned a handful of these coins into genuine rarities. The 1970 S quarter was produced at the San Francisco Mint, and like many coins from that facility in that era, it was struck as a proof coin. Now, proof coins are different from regular circulation coins in several key ways. They're struck using specially prepared dies and polished planchets. Basically, the blank metal discs that become coins. The result is a coin with incredibly sharp details and a brilliant, mirror-like finish. These coins are made in limited numbers and are intended for collectors, not for everyday use. So right from the start, you're dealing with a coin that was never meant to be spent. But that's just the beginning. What makes this coin truly valuable and rare is a minting error that slipped through the cracks in the most unusual way. A very small number of 1970 S quarters were mistakenly struck on foreign coin planchets, specifically on planchets originally intended for 1941 Canadian quarters. That's right, a U.S. quarter from 1970 struck on a Canadian coin blank from nearly 3 decades earlier. So how does something like this happen? It comes down to the inner workings of the U.S. Mint. During the 1960s and 70s, the San Francisco Mint was responsible not only for producing U.S. coinage, but also for fulfilling contracts to produce coins for foreign countries. These contracts often involved handling different sizes and compositions of blanks. Sometimes, despite strict quality controls, these blanks got mixed into the wrong production lines. In the case of the 1970 S quarter, it appears that a few leftover Canadian planchets, still bearing the faint impressions of their original 1941 markings, made their way into the proof coin process. The result? A hybrid coin, a U.S. quarter struck with a proof finish, but on a foreign silver planchet. Under close examination, especially with a magnifying glass or under microscopic analysis, you can actually see remnants of the original Canadian design beneath the U.S. imagery. In some cases, traces of the 1941 date are still visible, ghosted beneath the more dominant U.S. strike. Now, just imagine being the collector who first discovered this. You're flipping through proof sets, checking details like mint luster and cameo contrast, when suddenly you notice something doesn't quite match. And then, under magnification, you see it, a trace of another design, another date. It was one of those discoveries that stopped the numismatic community in its tracks. Only a very limited number of these error coins are known to exist. How limited? As of today, fewer than a dozen confirmed examples have surfaced, and each one has caused a stir. When the first widely publicized example hit the market, it sold for an astonishing $35,000. That was back in 2016, and it instantly elevated the coin's status to legendary among error collectors. Since then, additional examples have fetched similarly impressive sums, with the highest graded coins commanding the biggest premiums. Condition is a critical factor in the value of any rare coin, but with this one, it's absolutely essential. Because we're talking about a proof coin, collectors expect perfection or close to it. Grades like PR67, PR68, or PR69 are ideal. At those levels, the coin's surfaces must be virtually flawless, with no spotting, hazing, or visible scratches. Anything less, even a minor imperfection, can drop the coin's value significantly. That's why it's crucial to handle these coins with extreme care and to have them professionally graded and encapsulated by a respected service like PCGS or NGC. Even more fascinating is that some of these coins may still be hiding in plain sight. Many collectors who purchased 1970 S-proof sets decades ago never thought to examine them for errors. The coin looks normal enough at first glance. It isn't until you study the surface under the right lighting or magnification that the traces of the underlying Canadian quarter become visible. So if you have a 1970 S-proof set in your collection or inherited one, it's well worth taking another look. Now, not every 1970 S quarter is struck on a Canadian planchet. The vast majority are perfectly normal proof coins with no added value beyond their basic numismatic interest. But that's what makes the error so special. It's not just about rarity. It's about the sheer improbability of it happening in the first place. The odds of a foreign silver blank from 1941 finding its way into a 1970 US proof production line and being struck with a completely different design? Practically astronomical. And yet, it happened. For collectors in the 40 to 60-year-old range, this coin holds a special kind of nostalgia. It represents a time when minting practices weren't as automated and digitized as they are today. Mistakes happened. Blanks got mixed up. And those mistakes, when preserved, became incredible opportunities for collectors to own a truly one-of-a-kind piece of mint history. What's also worth noting is that these coins can't be identified by weight or color alone. Since the Canadian 1941 planchet was made of silver, 80% silver, in fact, the coin may have a slightly different hue than the typical clad quarter, but it's not immediately obvious unless you know what you're looking for. That's why authentication is so crucial. If you think you've spotted one, don't clean it, don't try to enhance the markings, and don't store it loose. Contact a reputable dealer or grading service immediately. And here's a small but fascinating footnote. One of the known examples of the 1970 S error quarter came directly from a collection of a former Mint employee. That adds another layer of intrigue to the story. Was it set aside intentionally? Was it discovered post-production? We may never know, but it lends a human element to the coin's history, an element that makes the story feel personal, almost cinematic. In the end, the 1970 S Washington quarter struck on a 1941 Canadian planchet is a perfect blend of rarity, mystery, and minting history. It's not just a coin. It's a story, frozen in time, with layers that continue to unfold. For serious collectors, finding one of these is like striking gold, not just because of the price tag, but because of the story it carries. And that's only half of what we're looking at today. While the 1970 quarter delivers a mix of international intrigue and minting oddities, the 1979 quarter brings us into the world of mechanical errors, transitional issues, and valuable varieties that many collectors still overlook. Let's shift gears now and explore what makes the 1979 quarter another standout in the world of rare and valuable U.S. coins. Shifts in minting processes often give rise to the most intriguing collectibles, and the 1979 Washington quarter exemplifies that perfectly. While its basic design mirrors the familiar profile and eagle reverse, its birth came at a time of transition, experimentation, and rising interest in error and variety coins. The story begins in early 1979, when the U.S. Mint was still adjusting to clad coinage introduced in 1965. Demand for quarters soared as coin-operated machines multiplied, and the Denver and Philadelphia mints ramped up production accordingly. But with that volume came the potential for anomalies: dies misaligned, blanks misfed, and planchets improperly cut. These mechanical hiccups produced a handful of standout errors, the most sought-after of which is the double-die obverse from the Denver Mint. This variety, officially cataloged as DDO-001, arose from a die that inadvertently received multiple impressions of the hub, slightly offset, before striking planchets. The result is a ghosted secondary image visible in the lettering and date on the obverse. Under ordinary light, it may appear subtle, but under 3 to 5 times magnification, the doubling on Liberty and the 1979D mint mark leaps out. It's not an everyday sight. Experts estimate that fewer than a few hundred specimens exist in high enough grade to draw serious collector interest. Even within that small population, fully unrestored, deeply mirrored examples are rare. Collectors who've turned their gaze to this quarter often recount how they first noticed the bulging lettering, a telltale wave of metal doubling that seems to vibrate across the coin's surface. That moment of recognition ignites the real thrill, knowing you've stumbled on a mechanical misstep frozen in time, a precise error born of industrial coincidence. As such, the 1979 D Double Die obverse has earned star status in most specialized error coin sets, sitting alongside famous rarities like the 1955 Lincoln Cent or the 1937 D three-legged Buffalo Nickel. Auction results reflect that appetite. In March 2024, a PCGS MS67 Plus DDO-001 sold for a record $12,500, setting a new high watermark for this variety. A year earlier, a similar piece graded MS66 fetched $4,600, already a considerable premium over a base quarter price. Even coins graded MS65, which still display strong doubling and attractive fields, can command upwards of $1,200 in private sales. Those numbers dwarf the sub-$5 value of a standard MS65 1979 quarter, highlighting just how condition and certification can amplify value in the variety coin world. Beyond the double die, the 1979 series delivered other delights. Clipped planchets, for instance, occur when a blank that's been improperly punched from a strip of metal misses part of its outline, leading to a crescent-shaped blank that, when struck, shows a curved missing section along the rim. Collectors prize these for their dramatic appearance and absolute uniqueness. No two clipped planchets are exactly alike. In 2022, a clipped planchet 1979 P quarter graded MS64 sold for $2,800, a testament to the strong market for bold, eye-catching errors. There's also appeal in more modest, yet still collectible, varieties like off-center strikes and die cracks. An off-center 1979 D quarter that struck just 5 to 10% off the center can be found in the $50 to $150 range in uncirculated grades, but when the off-center shift reaches 15% or more, prices can spike to $500 or beyond, depending on grade. Tiny die cracks, those slender raised lines snaking across the face of the coin, are less lucrative, but they offer interesting conversation pieces. A specimen exhibiting a pronounced funnel crack through the date may sell for $75 to $150, especially if it appears on a higher-grade example. Of course, some collectors prefer the proof side of things. In 1979, the San Francisco Mint produced proof quarters in cameo, with frosted devices against mirrored fields. While these are common as proof pieces go, a proof quarter exhibiting a die clash, where the obverse design is faintly impressed onto the reverse and vice versa, can become collectible. Proof clash errors from 1979 typically trade between $100 and $300 in top proof, 68 grades, depending on the prominence of the clash marks. Condition remains queen when it comes to value variations. A standard business strike 1979 quarter in circulation, worn, dull, and lacking mint luster, is generally worth face value or a modest premium if in exceptional preservation. Move to mint state levels, and in MS60 to MS63 range, a regular Philadelphia or Denver quarter might fetch $3 to $10. Crossing into MS64 and MS65 territory sees values climbing to $10 to $25. But once you reach MS66 and above, the market thins dramatically, and prices can swell to $50 to $150. These general estimates pale beside the few examples of specialty errors, but they underline how much condition alone can influence even a common date. Historical context enriches the story further. In 1979, the United States was recovering from the unrest of the previous decade and grappling with inflation. Coin collecting was experiencing a renaissance. Coin clubs flourished, and publications devoted entire issues to the hunt for varieties. Mail-order flyers promised rare finds tucked away in circulation, and collectors armed themselves with magnifiers and reference guides, eager to pluck treasures from everyday change. In that landscape, the 1979 double die and other errors emerged as proofs that exciting finds could be lurking in a pocketful of quarters. Skilled collectors often recommend starting with a handful of business strikes straight from rolls, inspecting each coin at 3 times to 5 times magnification for doubling, clipping, or misalignment. That grassroots approach can be both budget-friendly and thrilling. After all, nothing beats the surprise of spotting an error you didn't know you were looking for. And for higher-end pieces, attending specialized auctions or working through reputable dealers ensures authenticity and proper grading, critical for maintaining value and liquidity. Beyond the mechanical errors, there's a human side to this coin's appeal. Owners of high-grade doubles often share stories of serendipity, finding one at a coin show, inheriting a roll from a grandparent's estate, even discovering one mixed into a proof set decades after purchase. These personal narratives add warmth to what might otherwise be dry numismatic analysis, reinforcing that each coin carries not just metal but memories and moments of discovery. When it comes to long-term outlook, the double-die obverse variety seems destined to retain its allure. With only a handful of top-grade examples known, and with many likely still undiscovered, collector demand remains strong. Even in a market that ebbs and flows with economic tides, the unique nature of this era underpins consistent interest. And as additional clipped planchets or off-center strikes surface, they too capture imaginations and auction paddles. Wrapping up our journey through the world of rare 1979 Washington quarters, it's clear that this coin offers something for every level of collector. From the high-stakes chase for a double-die obverse to the visual drama of a clipped planchet and the subtle intrigue of die cracks, there's always a story waiting in each disc of copper nickel. And with condition grading amplifying every nuance, the market rewards those who look closely and learn what to seek. Bringing both quarters into focus, you've seen how a tiny mint mix-up in 1970 led to an international hybrid worth tens of thousands, and how mechanical quirks in 1979 delivered varieties that range from affordable curiosities to high-value rarities. These coins underscore what makes numismatics endlessly fascinating: the blend of history, science, art, and chance. Whether you're inspecting a proof set from your childhood or paging through new rolls from the bank, there's always the possibility of uncovering something that transforms a simple quarter into a numismatic marvel. Stay curious, handle your coins with care, and remember that the next great find could be just a magnifier away.